Text by S.E. Hinton, Chapter 8, Part 1. Somehow, losing Negrito that second time was harder than the first time. It was just knowing he really was gone for good. Somebody else was feeding him and brushing him, and he was watching for somebody else in the mornings and after school. That made me feel like I had a constant toothache or something. Even when I was thinking about something else, I could feel it in the back of my mind. The only thing that could really take my mind off Negrito was Jamie. We were kind of going together. I couldn't figure out exactly how it had happened, except that we started meeting between classes and had lunch together, and I quit riding home on Johnny's cycle, so me and Jamie could go to the drugstore and get a Coke before we rode the bus home. Everybody in the school knew we were going together. I used to wonder how guys ever got the nerve to ask a girl for a date. But since Jamie had been my friend before she was my girlfriend, it was really easy to say at lunch one day, "You think Cole'd let you go out with me?" She shook her head. Her hair curved around her face like dark feathers. For a second there, I hated Cole Collins. Then I didn't hate him because he was Jamie's father, and I'd have to learn to get along with him. "It's not just you," she said. "Cole thinks I'm too young to date anybody. No car dates until I'm 16. And Mona agrees with him. All she ever does is agree with him. If I ever get married, I'm never going to agree with my husband." I raised my eyebrows. "Not ever?" She looked at me with the eyes of a wicked colt. "Oh, maybe sometimes. Anyway, I bet Cole wouldn't mind me going to watch Bob play basketball. If you were watching Mason, we could sit together." "Cole doesn't go to the games?" I asked. Pop never missed one. Cole went through all that stuff with Charlie, only it was football. And when Blackie refused to go out for anything, sports got to be a family hassle. Cole and Blackie really had some go-rounds. You know what? Cole would like to have Mason for a kid, I bet. And Mason would like a father, like Cole. "Huh," I said, because I figured it was politer than saying, "Mace hates Cole's guts." "No, really, Tex, listen. That time you and Johnny and Bob came home drunk, Cole kind of hinted real strong for us to stop hanging around with you guys. But I could tell he'd been impressed with Mason. He's not too impressed with any of us. Charlie's too much of a playboy, and now Bob's got it into his head that he wants to be a priest. Johnny's such a scatterbrain. I think Cole will be relieved if he just makes it to 21. And me, the little lady, Cole has the hardest time understanding that I'm a person, just like the rest of his kids. That being a girl doesn't mean I'm going to be sweet and dainty and grow up to be a devoted little mother just like Mona. Geez, it gives me cold chills just to think of it." She scrunched her face up like she was hearing squeaky chalk across the blackboard. "How about Blackie?" I asked. This was really interesting. I never thought about what parents would want out of a kid. I thought you just took what you got. "Don't ever tell anybody I told you this." She dropped her voice. "Swear?" "I swear." You know, when Blackie moved out, he didn't just move, he ran away from home. It was after a big fight with Cole about not going to college. Not playing football was bad enough, but Blackie didn't even want to go to college. He didn't even want to go to art school. Said he had to know what he could teach himself first. Man, it drove Cole nuts to argue with him, because Blackie never argued back. You know how quiet he was. Sometimes I couldn't tell he was in the same room with me. He just stood there and let Cole get madder and madder. Then, that night he took off. He wrote Mona from San Francisco to let her know he was okay. Tex, Cole and Mona had some awful fights about it. I never heard them fight before. They didn't know we were listening. Me and Johnny sat on the stairs and listened to them, and we both were crying like little kids. I reached over and took her hand. I couldn't stand the thought of her crying. She took a sudden deep breath. Anyway, Cole hasn't made a big deal out of sports since. Basketball was Bob's idea. Blackie had the perfect build for football. It must be weird for him to look like a football player and be totally different on the inside. I had my mind on other things. Mason sometimes goes to parties after the games, I said suddenly, with a bunch of other people, so I could get the pickup and drive us around. Suddenly, I remembered Johnny. If I had the truck, he'd want to go driving around too. It would be hard to tell him the truth. He never understood how I felt about Jamie. He was interested in girls, sure, but it was like being interested in Playboy pictures and stuff like that. He hadn't got to the point where he was interested in real girls. And even though he loved Jamie in the same way he loved their dog, he didn't quite realize that she was a girl, the kind of girl somebody would lay awake thinking about for hours. Johnny, I began. Jamie quirked the corners of her mouth down. I'll tell Johnny he's not wanted. But, well, he's not, is he? All right. He'll take it a lot better from me than you. Boy, she was mean. I really liked that. I really did. They were out to kill Mason. It was plain from the second he stepped on court and the opposing team started booing. People were trying to make him foul or just plain knock him down and put him out of the game. They didn't know Mason. That kind of thing just made him cooler and cooler. He really played better when people were booing him than when our side cheered him. I took Mason pretty much for granted at home, but watching him on a basketball court kind of put you in awe. Man, he was good. I don't think I could have stood having all those people not liking me. But then Mason never cared much whether people liked him or not. Everybody does, though, I said to Jamie, after telling her that. You mean he's popular? Everybody thinks he's cool. Not everybody likes him. I didn't want to know if that included her. It would really bother me if she didn't like Mason. It took everybody screaming at once to get my mind back on the game. Everybody was on their feet, screeching as Mason caught a rebound and made a wild shot that turned out to be a basket, and on his way down from the leap, an opposing player slammed into him. He came up off the floor so fast it looked like a bounce, and for a second I thought that the other guy was going to get stuffed through the basket, head first. Whistles were blowing all over. It looked like everybody was going to rush into the middle of the court and start killing each other. People were just going crazy. Mason stood there, holding his right elbow. As far as I shivered. I remembered one other time I'd seen him fighting to control himself like that. He was right on the edge of blowing up like a stick of dynamite. The coach came out and looked at Mason, and then Mason turned and stalked off the court. The screaming was unbelievable. He sat down on the bench while the doctor looked at his elbow, bent his arm up and down some, then said something to Mason that made him shake his head angrily. You could see the doctor getting mad. Finally, Mason got up and followed him out.